Hello, my name is Stefan Fricke from the German Outsourcing Association, and I'd like to welcome you to our webcast on how to manage your external IT team. We have invited today two industry experts, Igor Fedulov, CEO of Intersog and in the US and in Ukraine, and Richard Fredrick, VP of ISG2 Technologies in the US. Hello, Igor.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Igor Fedulov, and I'm the owner and a partner in a company, a custom software development company based in Chicago. And I've been running this business for about 8 years at this point, and I'm here to talk about the challenges and solutions that we as a company came through during our course of the 8 years experience working with remote teams and managing people in different countries developing a software. Me personally, I'm coming with the background of IT. I have a bachelor degree in computer science and a master degree in business administration. And I have a lot of experience behind me personally, working in the IT industry, starting from projects for Volkswagen and all the way to American Airlines and Orbitz as a big travel site.
Okay, thank you, Igor. As I said, the second presenter is Richard Frederick from the US. Welcome, Richard. Could you also please introduce yourself in a sentence or two? Richard, can you hear me? Okay, maybe that's going to work later. We'll see. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so far. Then I would say, Igor and Richard, let's start. Maybe with a question directly to you, and more general question: what are the three most important aspects when getting together with an external project partner? Might be an interesting question right now.
I can take that one. Essentially, from our experience, most of the challenges, the three important things, they all gear towards talent and people. In our experience nowadays, it's very common for companies to see people work from home, and there are pluses and minuses to that approach. The fact is that working from home yields to a longer working day, but it doesn't have the same appearance as coming to the office and same collaboration that people can participate in. So from our point of view, working with remote teams is essentially the same thing. It's all about making sure that the developers or otherwise technical people who are working remotely are able to report on daily tasks, follow through with the set goals, communicate effectively, and be recognized effectively. Because you cannot actually plan a remote team without having those three things all in one hand. Is effective communication, clearly set goals as to what are the expectations of each individual team member, and the third one is a reward, is how you essentially reward a person for achieving those goals and effectively communicating. So all those three things, I view them as a psychological approach, as a cue, action, and the reward at the end that allows this behavior to become as trained as possible, so that nobody's actually thinking about how to do those things and work more effectively without being in the office.
Okay, and how do you deal with the question of cultural differences? I mean, you are in the US right now. You work with German companies, from what I understood, but you have development teams in the Ukraine. How does that work? What's your experience? I mean, I heard from a lot of people that that's kind of a drawback, that people think, okay, maybe that's difficult with another culture and so on. Um, what's your experience?
Um, so I can divide those differences in two portions. From what we have experienced, there are corporate differences, and there's differences in culture, meaning anything that happens outside of the company. The corporate differences, and this is very important, is, for example, in US, it is a must-do to show up in the office on time, be in meetings on time, and be very, very respectful of other people's schedules. Um, and there's deadlines that have to be met, and there's a whole vibe about the workday and the length of it and the productivity. Working with Eastern Europe creates this different, I guess, approach where what we see is a different velocity of the developers. In the morning or first portion of the day, there's a very slow output of or any very slow collaboration. Closer to the end of the day and past the work hand, there's a lot more things that are getting done. So we as an organization culturally changed the way we work. We kind of shifted all of the important meetings toward the end of the day in Ukraine so that we can get more get more productive, essentially. And from the cultural differences, it's also very important to understand that the holidays schedule is different. There's religious holidays, there is a state holidays, there is a countrywide holidays that do not while with the American holidays. So it's in those sense, it's very important about planning and very important to understand that even though those days are not holidays in Ukraine, they need to be planned ahead and worked around, in essence, to prepare the customers here that most of the delivery team is going to be absent, for example, for a couple of days because of a holiday in the country where they're in. And it's also very important to understand that things like the Friday evenings where people do tend to leave office early, and sometimes it could be planned ahead as well, where after 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Fridays, you would assign all these self-improvement tasks to people, and those are essentially easy to achieve without anybody else's presence, and then those can be reported on Monday. So those things, essentially planning is the most important, I say aspect. Because once you learn the culture differences, is just how you plan for overcoming them is what gets you to the success.
And what would you plan? I mean, what are the aspects that you say that you plan to handle these differences?
Well, first of all, and this is not a secret, the biggest challenge is a communication challenge. When we started working back in the days with Ukrainian development team, the first thing that happened was the misconnect. We were expecting things, and they were expecting something, but nobody was expressing that in the communication. So we would send emails saying, well, when is this build is going to be ready? We'll get back the response that we're working on it, and it's going to be ready so and so. But over the years, we figured out that the difficulties in communication can be easily overcome if we would do a daily face-to-face or voice meetings where we all get in the same room and use Skype, for example, and person-to-person go around the table and have everybody speak to the fact as to what he was working on yesterday and what he is working on tomorrow or today, for example. And that helped tremendously because at that point in time, we were able to understand whether or not there are any difficulties or anybody is expecting or waiting on something. and that cut tremendously the time from expecting a build to expecting builds, much faster fashion. So we started planning for those things. There is essentially an everyday 1 hour for each team to get together and exchange ideas at the round table. We also, one of the things, in organizations, there are hierarchies. There's managers that manage team leads, and team leads manage the team members, and so on. That creates tensions, especially when there are cross-organizational hierarchies. For example, there's a manager on our side, and there's a manager on the side in Ukraine, and we definitely want to have access to the end developer. So what we instituted is the notion of essentially a goal that everybody is trying to pursue. So that created the collaboration mindset, because everybody has the same goal, and it's much easier than to cross the boundaries of manager on the manager, and essentially developer, and get things done much faster. And if everybody on the same goal, like a deadline or sprint that they're delivering, that got us to the point where if everybody's doing the same thing, then everybody's recognized appropriately. Then managers started to understand that their task is not to be supervising everybody, but coaching. That's the difference. So instead of trying to manipulate every single team member, they would just go and round robin coach every single person and dedicate time to work with them to get them better and to understand what the goal is, why this development work is happening. So that helped us a lot.
And what's your experience from the customer's perspective? I mean, how long do they take, or how much trouble they have to get used to work with a remote team? What is the customer feedback actually? What did you experience?
Well, the first and foremost thing I would say, do not abandon your remote team. It's the first thing that everybody says. They actually started to realize that they can now better screen their own managers to find out whether or not the managers are good or not. And the reason I'm saying this, it's good managers are able to manage team regardless of the location. They will schedule things and schedule conversations, team members, and manage the communication in difficult to understand aspects. And what the customers are saying is there's three. Never think that the remote team is not part of your team. Is always make sure that you bring somebody from that team over to your office, or vice versa. Go and work remotely in Ukraine for a couple of weeks, and that creates a mindset where the remote team feels that they're part of the organization, of the same organization, and that creates momentum. The second thing is, do not forget to recognize the team members on the successes, even if it's a small milestone. If you forget to say a great job and the customer was super happy to the actual remote people, for example, you get used to saying it in the office. You will walk in the office and tell it to your developers on site. But sometimes customers do forget to recognize people who working remotely. This is also very important. That also brings a lot of momentum to the team, because they feel now empowered to do this constantly. And so those are the major things that I could think of.
Okay, but actually, I mean, thinking from the customer perspective, now I work with a team. I don't know anybody there. I mean, we talked and here and there, but I mean, I'm not really confident with working now somebody in Ukraine. So is there anything, few small steps you can take to be a bit more confident, or to build this confidence, trust maybe? what is your experience?
In order to build trust, it's like in a relationship. You will not know the other person unless you start communicating with them. And it doesn't matter if you talk about work only or you talk about the kids, the family, or anything else. The more you're going to understand each individual contributor, the better they will understand what you as a company or as a customer are trying to achieve. And it's also it's like a relationship that leads to marriage. You have to know a person, and only way you can know them without physically being next to them is to establish proper channels of communication: phone, email, Skype. There are different things, and nowadays in the telecommunication, it's so easy to just install VoIP a phone in remote office that you can call from your office and do not incur any charges, and that leads to I guess to the build of trust over time. Once you start learning who are the people who are working for me and how they do the things, how can I improve? Those are the questions that you're asking yourself. But close communication is the key.
Okay. And I mean, especially, I mean, we are coming from the German market, and if I read the market studies, then people say, okay, the lose of control, these losing control and things are of concern, especially in our markets, in the German market. Um, what can people do to I mean, to handle that, or to get a feeling of something is happening there, there's a performance, uh, that something comes out. What do you suggest to a German customer, especially with a lower risk-taking mentality and with the wish of having a look in and having a little bit control? What do you recommend in this situation?
Okay, I can speak on experiences. The customer we're working out of Munich. It's a long relationship now. It's over 3 years. They have started small, and I think the success that they were able to achieve is they at the beginning of the relationship, we put one of our key communicators or key team leads on a team to ensure that while the team is getting built out according to the customer specification, we didn't know how many developers there needed and so on. That person was 100% liaison between the German customer and the development team in Ukraine. So he would report himself. So essentially, the day would structure like this. It's in the morning. He would say, "What my plan for the day is to understand how your VPN system works and how to train developers to use the VPN in order to access your systems." And at the end of the day, he would report things that did not work or had problems with and how they overcame. So, and that created a set of documents that they would exchange between the both sides. They're expected on every day. They're not big documents. They're one-page documents, but that they look like executive summary as to how the progress is doing, what are the things that were achieved, and what are the problems. It's very important. We call it first 3 months, right? The first 3 months of any relationship is when both companies need to figure out what are the effective ways to send the information over. And those documents help tremendously to open, I guess, doors on both sides. Because there were documents and they had a clear outline of what needs to be done by customer and what are the expected dates. Nowadays, we use a system which is online. It's called Trello. It's a ticketing system that allows us to create a project for customer and essentially boot camp, customer boot camp, where we would put in issues that we need to work through, and then we would assign them to team members or to the customer, and at the end of the day, we always are able to see what are the main challenges or what are the bottlenecks that we have to deal with. And I think this is very important, that you never wait for somebody to send you something. Once you wait, that creates an unknown, and if there's a lot of unknowns, that is going to lead to frustration at the beginning, and to I guess to possibility to look for another outsourcing partner. So always try to be proactive on both sides for the first 3 months.
Okay, good. And how can I tell that my company is able to handle such a relationship? Do I need to prepare, or can I just go to the next IT partner, put my project on the table, and run it? Or how's that?
Okay. This question is twofold. The first question you have to ask yourself: do I have ability in myself or in any of my managers to manage a remote team? And in order to figure this out, what we usually suggest and I've worked a lot in the Bay Area, the way they test this is they would take the entire team, would say all of the developers, and the companies who have bigger budgets, they would have they will like rent a big hotel conference room for a week, and they would put all the developers in that conference place, all the local developers, with all of the food provided and everything, and they will have their managers still be in the office and figure out whether or not they're still productive in this setting. Some customers try to do the same exercise with working from home. I know an RSA security company out of San Francisco, and I talked to one of my friends who works there. They practice this constantly. They don't even have an office space. They have this once a month, and they bring their entire team works from home. And so what that does is it essentially proves or disproves if the manager is able to effectively manage the team that is not located next to them. And that essentially boils down to effective email communication and effective phone communication. And those things are very important. And once your manager is comfortable with your team working offsite, then you definitely can take on this challenge. If there are hiccups, and there are going to be hiccups on the first try, you have to work through them before trying out and trusting somebody else to do the work remotely. So those are the, I guess, the suggestions that I would have.
So, but with smaller projects, that might be a bit oversized for the preparation, so and people might get afraid and say, "Oh, I don't have time anyways for anything." So now I should even start to make big changes and test my developers if they fit and my managers. What do you suggest for a smaller project?
Smaller projects, you probably have to ask yourself, what is your goal? Are you interested in saving money on this specific project, or is there not enough talent? And essentially answer those questions first. Can this be done by internal resources, but at a longer deadline, or time? Because you have to understand that any vendor you bring in, they'll have to have those 3 months where you train how your system works. Even if you expect the vendor to start to hit the ground running, there are going to be some hiccups during the process until it's all worked out. So there are going to be decline in productivity at any rate. This is expected, and this is required so that both companies figure out how each of them works and what are the expectations. So for smaller projects, you probably are looking to get a company who is able to fully take on a project and for that, you have to be ready to provide a written specification of what needs to be done. And that is the only way to effectively do small projects. Because if there's any change of scope or any scope creep during this stage, then you will have to 100% participate in change management and sprint planning, because the deadlines will shift, and potentially that will lead to frustration, and that will lead to longer deadlines. So be prepared to write the specification as detailed as possible for a smaller project. That is a key to success. And once the company who will take this on and will deliver it before the deadline, then you can talk about them becoming your longer-term partner and figuring out how you can work in more closer relationship.
Okay. Thank you, Igor. Do you have anything to add on that right now? Otherwise, I would.
I don't, but I was hoping Dick can.
Hello. Yes. Hi. This is Dick Fredrick. I'm an owner of a software company in Chicago, Illinois here, and I've been working with outsourced teams for close to 8 years now. And I would agree with everything Igor said. Most particularly, I would agree that communications is absolutely critical. As working with anyone else, even if someone is in your own office, you must establish a personal relationship with between the team leads. That's been very important. There are many communication tools that we're able to take advantage of. We regularly use Skype for daily updates, verbal updates with the team. We rely on email, and we do text messaging as required. But what's also helped is, and again, this is based on a long-term relationship, have face-to-face meetings with critical team members. We get to know them as people. Another thing that I would mention is setting expectations with the customer. In some cases, it's very important that the customer be aware that this is a slightly different relationship than having someone in your office. And it's important that when you start outsourcing, as opposed to having your own captive in-house team, it's important that expectations be set with your customers, that even though you can't see the person sitting in the next desk, it's okay. And it's important to know that the progress will be occurring, and progress be tracked, and that the customer know exactly what they will be getting. We system in controlling not only project work but support work as it comes in, and that also is very important to set expectations for when things will be done, and it also keeps the line of communications open with the customer. Those were probably the points that I'd like to emphasize based on what Igor said. I would say of them, probably communication is the key.
Yeah. Thanks, Richard. Does anybody else have questions from the audience? I can open the mic right away. Please just raise a hand or use the chat. Okay. So if no one has any question right now, please take a look at the contact details. You can contact Igor or me, myself, via the Outsourcing Verband email anytime for questions, for follow-up questions on this webinar. If you get into a project or consider outsourcing, you start writing your request for proposal. However, please just write us, and can give some useful tips if that is required.
Stefan, could I interject one other thing here? Before we go, I would just like to emphasize that that some of my customers include very large global automotive companies, primarily Japanese-based at the present time. But from my perspective, another very important point is being able to use an outsourced team the way we have has enabled us to build some applications we never could have justified on a financial basis before. It's been very good for us from that perspective.
Okay. Sasha had a question. Your mic is open. Actually, you can talk. Okay. Yeah. Then I would say we are through so far. As I said, please get in touch if there are any questions to this topic or to other topics, especially. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.